Welcome to today's lecture. So we will continue with our strategic analysis when no stakeholder can be identified as the primary stakeholder, that is the multi-stakeholder system that we learnt about in our previous lecture, the socio-economic ecosystem. So in our previous lecture we covered how to do project socio-economic ecosystem analysis. So we saw how to do a preparatory questionnaire for socio-economic ecosystem, the infrastructure analysis. Today we will start discussing on how to do project actor analysis. So once you have completed the infrastructure analysis and the preparatory questionnaire for socio-economic ecosystems, from the local visionary or the administrator you already have a list of all the possible types of actors. So for doing this project actor analysis we will go to each type of actor. Say for example weaver was one of the actors, so we will go to different types of weavers. When we meet one person, the first person, how do we get in touch with that? Usually it is little bit more tough that you go to a person completely unintroduced in such context, because if you are a complete stranger people might be skeptical to your presence in their locality. So a better option is get introduced to some of your actors through your local administrator or local visionary, and then from these actors, so say your visionary introduces you to weaver 1, so the weaver 1 can then take you to other weavers. The advantage of this method is because to all the weavers that you will go, because you are getting introduced by somebody who belongs to that particular place, trust factor will be much higher. So it will be easier for you to get information. But the downside of this kind of an approach is, so this weaver will take you to other weavers who are like him or her, or like or are in his or her friend circle. As a result you might come across only similar type of viewpoints, similar type of ways of doing things. So under such circumstances what you can do is ask your local visionary or local administrator to introduce you to different types of weavers, and from each type of weaver, when you go into their circle of other weavers which are their friends, you will come to know about many more different aspects, many more different ways of thinking, ways of doing things, different kinds of circumstances, and so on. So how do we do this project actor analysis? So all these charts that you can see, so the empathy mapping, AU-IU mapping is something which we use mostly to gather information from our actors. Then we do an analysis by using the value opportunity analysis, SWOT, PESTEL, and we create the systems map. It will be also very beneficial that after I have worked on the value opportunity analysis, SWOT, PESTEL, and system map, I again go back to my actors to verify whether my analysis is correct or not. I might also try to do the analysis sitting with the actors in case that is possible. Many times the actors might have the time to do for it, other times they might not have it. Say for example the weavers, they are paid on the basis of the length of cloth and the number of design elements that they weave. So in those particular contexts, if you want the weaver to come to you, or you go to the weaver and you want the weaver to spend time with you answering your questions or helping you in some analysis, you are actually asking him or her to compromise on the money earned. So in such context it might be more helpful that if you can compensate the actor for the amount of money lost because the actor participated in talking to you. You might also try to see if you can talk to the actor outside his or her work time so that there is no wastage of time. So you should always ask what works best for that particular weaver. In case of our weavers, because they were employed by the entrepreneur, so it was not very appropriate for us to go and directly talk to the weaver and take their time. So rather we spoke to the entrepreneurs, and then with their permission we took the weavers and we compensated the weavers for the loss of time. We did not compensate the entrepreneur because for him that amount of money was way much more lesser as compared to what it means for the weaver. For the helpers and for the reelers, because when we met them they were not actually engaged in doing certain kind of activities, so for us it was not very mandatory that we compensate us. But now there will be a situation that I am compensating weaver but not the helper and the reeler, which might create a kind of a uncomfortable situation. So you have to take a proper judgment on how do you pay. You should also take care that you do not engage in so when we are doing an interview, we will be making a audio recording, a video recording, we will be taking photographs. So you should also inform your participants that where all you are going to use it. Either you take a written consent form where you have written all the media of recording that you are going to use, and where all you are going to use the content that you have gathered from them, their photographs and so on. Either you write down that this is how it will be used and get a signature from them, or in other cases it might be also a better idea that on a video, so you start the video, you inform the person about what you are going to record, how you are going to produce it in different media, to in front of whom are you going to produce it, and then you ask, do you agree with this kind of a situation, and the your actor tells to you, yes, I agree with it. So that as a record should be always preserved. In cases if the actor does not agree with you taking a video, you must avoid taking video. If the actor says it's okay to take the video but I should not be my face should not be made visible, so in that particular case you say that okay, I will not make your face visible, and when in all documents and wherever you present it, you always blur that person's photograph. And this kind of consent should be also recorded on a media. So let's see how to do this actor analysis. So the aim of the actor analysis first process, the aim of the sub process actor analysis is to identify the needs of the actors. So our first tool is empathy map canvas. So what this canvas tells you, so first you write it, designed for name of the actor. You can write down your name. Say you are doing this research in a team, so who is going and asking the question, it might be important to write that person's name. Then the date when you took it and the kind of vision. The vision statement says what you wanted to know from the actor. Say for example, if I say my aim was to know how the life of a weaver goes around, how he is compensated in this system, is the weaver happy enough? So that can become my vision statement for this particular empathy map. Now coming to the questions. So what this map helps you is, when you go to a field, it will be beneficial that if you print this particular map, this map you can download from this particular website. So you print it on an A3 sheet and you carry couple of them and you use them to make your pointers. So you do a video recording which you will analyze later, but you also, so there are 2 people or 3 people who go together and you also make notes on this. So the question 1 over here is, who are we empathizing with? So who is the person we want to understand? What is the situation they are in? What is their role in the situation? So who are we empathizing with? Of course we know that the weaver. So now what kind of weaver this person is? Is this person weaves for himself? Or is this person weaves for an entrepreneur? Does this person weave muga? Does this person weave tashar? So you can define this weaver. Is this person who is regarded as an expert weaver? Is this person a novice weaver? So there can be many ways of defining this particular weaver. So in the first context, we are trying to understand who is this person that we want to understand. What is the situation they are in? What is their role in this particular situation? Next comes our second step. What do they need to do? So what do they need to do differently? Say for example, in our previous question we already know what do they need to do. They need to be a weaver, but they might also be having some idea in their mind what do they need to do differently so that they are to be successful more than other weavers, or what do they want to have to do differently from their community from which they belong, or from their family that they belong. So anything in any respect, what do they need to do differently, what jobs do they want or need to get done, what decisions do they need to make, how will we know they are successful. So when you ask them how will we know they are successful, is first you try to get their vision, like how do they define success. Only when somebody thinks that I am successful in doing what I am doing, they are happy with what they are doing. So you ask them to define those terms. Then comes 3, what do they see? What do they see in the marketplace? What do they see in their immediate immediate environment? What do they see others saying and doing? What are they watching and reading? This gives you an idea about their surroundings, because it's the surroundings which help a person in defining what do they want, what do they aspire to have. Then comes what do they say? What have we heard them say? What can we imagine them saying? 5th, what do they do? So what do they do today? What behavior have we observed? What can we imagine them doing? So when I'm in my first and second, what I'm trying to do is more like ask them questions. When I come into the third, it's or the fourth, and more when I come to the 5th and the 6th, I do ask them questions, but I am also trying to do an interpretation. So what do they do today? What behavior have we observed? What can we imagine them doing? So as soon as you say what can we imagine them doing, you have to formulate your questions accordingly. So say for example, I present before this weaver couple of scenarios. The answers to that scenarios helps me in answering what can we imagine them doing. Then what do they hear? What are they hearing others say? What are they hearing from friends? What are they hearing from colleagues? What are they hearing second hand? So what is the difference between see and hear? In this particular context, what it means more is when you see something, it's like a direct experience, whereas when you are hearing something, it's something which is coming from another person. And what do they say? In case of say, is a combination of see and hear, and as a result this person will make certain interpretations, and that is what they will be saying. Next one is AEIOU mapping. It is also done for the conducting phase. What it consists of? So A stands for activities, E for environment, I for interactions, O for objects, and U for users. So this particular tool is used for mapping the activities, environment, interactions, objects, and users. So say for example the users. So although this is like AEIOU in this direction, but we start from the users. So who is my user? A consumer or people who provide the behavior. So say in the case when I am trying to say weaver. So weaver is my user 1. Who is the main user in this particular AEIOU mapping? So I will show you the next slide. So you can see when I am doing an AEIOU mapping of a particular user, say in this case my weaver is the user 1. I am doing it specifically for this person. So I put the weaver as the main person, and I put all the activities, environment, interactions, objects for this particular weaver, and in the process the user 1 interacts with which all user 2, user 3 and user 4. Say my user 2 is the entrepreneur. In another AEIOU mapping where I will be doing the AEIOU mapping for an entrepreneur, the entrepreneur will go to the user 1 side and I will elaborate on its activities and so on, and in that case my weaver will come to user 2 group. So I have my users. Users are all the consumers or people who provide the particular behavior in that system. objects are key elements used. So after I have done users, my next task is to identify all the activities that my user does. So activities are goal driven or directed set of actions. So all goal driven or directed set of actions will fall under the category of activities. Say for example, for a weaver, weaving is an activity. Weaving is a major activity. Another activity can be, so if a particular thread breaks down, that person has to also join that particular thread. So joining broken threads is another activity, but it's a minor activity and it takes much lesser amount of time in the whole time frame. Now say when you are talking about weaving, in weaving also I can divide the activity into two activities. Say weaving plain cloth and plain weaving and weaving for designs and weaving for designs with Meena. It's our choice whether we want to do this distinction or not. The advantage of bifurcating it into lots of activities is for each and every activity I will, so my environment, interactions and object analysis is done on the basis of activities. So in case when I make one umbrella activity, which is very big activity, I might miss on to identifying the environments, interactions and objects properly. But in case I divide it into micro activities in one macro activity, I might be able to not miss any of those environments, interactions and objects. But the problem is you have a way much the time taken for doing this will increase subsequently. But I would always suggest that you divide the activities into as many sub activities as possible. You get a better picture while you are trying to understand what the weaver does. So when you are trying to conduct this particular research, AEIO mapping, so when you are talking to the weaver, you will try to identify all the activities that they do. So you will identify all the activities over here. So again you will take A3 sheets to do this particular activity and it will be more, so you have more space, and when you are talking to this person you can identify all the activities. Then in with what kind of environment these activities are done, there are times at which it might be way much better that if you fill up this part with photographs. So here you can see I have written analyzing. So you will use this particular tool while you are doing you are conducting the research, also while you are analyzing. So while analyzing, if it will be better that if you put pictures of the environment also, in that case when you get into the design activity, it helps you better see the image of how that the environment. Then in that environment, what are the objects used? Say for an activity of weaving which is happening at an entrepreneur's location, the objects used are the loom, the thread, the flying shuttle, the bamboo pedals, say the thread for making the Meena, or the thread for making the design motifs, or in case somebody is owning the machine, small hand machine which I showed you last time, used for making the design motifs faster. If somebody is owning that, that is another object. So people also put a cotton towel on top of the woven garment, so that is another object. So those will be per environment, you will identify many of these objects. When I have gathered the data for all the users, I will get into analyzing. When I am doing the analysis, my first step is identify. So I will have identified many problems and opportunities while I am doing this particular research. So for each problem or opportunity, so you will write the problem or opportunity in the center. Then you will make these 3 circles. So 1, 2 and 3 circles. So in the first circle you will have users who are in direct contact. So say for example, you took the problem space that you have to redesign the working environment, the shop floor in which they are going to work, because you identify that as a problem area. So in that case, who are the direct contact users? The weaver is the direct contact user, and the helpers are direct contact user in that particular context. I can also say that the entrepreneur is direct contact user, because is their setup. So they are supposed to do whatever they have to do. So first I identify all the direct contact, then I will try to identify all those users or the actors who are affected by it. So you can see a person who is in direct contact because of the way these circles are made. So a person who is in direct contact is also affected, is also a person who influences the system. Whereas a person whom you are going to put in affected, they are affected, they also influence the system, but they are not in direct contact with the system. Say for example, you want to get a kind of, say for example, a consumer. If me as a consumer, I want my garments in a produced in a human manner. So how do I know whether my garment is being produced in a human manner? I might want to see some kind of a certification on my product which says this garment has been produced in conditions in which the weavers were had very comfortable working environment. So this consumer, because of his or her demand of owning a product which is produced in a very nice working condition, comfortable working condition for the weavers, this consumer is in the influence category because they are not in direct contact with the workplace. They are not also affected by the workplace, but they are influencing the workplace. So they demand for a certification and they say, okay, I am ready to. So it's like fair price products. The consumer is ready to pay higher prices for better working conditions, better payment structure for the producers of the product. So in that case, my consumer is a influence level user. Now let's say who is going to be an affected user. So affected user does influence and is also affected by themselves. Say for example, in case I know that my entrepreneur is not someone who is in direct contact, but this particular entrepreneur, so what kind of entrepreneur this guy can be? Say for example, this guy is a entrepreneur who owns a wholesale distribution for certain kind of silk products. So now this particular entrepreneur is not in direct contact with the working environment, but this entrepreneur is one of those who sells this conscious consumer the product. So say for example, Fab India is this entrepreneur. So they are because their whole brand is about selling products through fair trade, so they are not in direct contact with the working area, but the work area affects their business. Only if the work area follows the fair trade principles, they are able to procure from them and sell it to my conscious consumer. So in that particular case, Fab India is an influencer and is also affected by it. So I will put this particular person in affected zone. So this is because this is my analysis phase. After I have done this for one particular problem or opportunity area that I think is a good area to work on, I will come to this particular map and I will try to do that particular map for all the users I have identified in that particular chart from my previous slide. This will slowly give you an idea which are the problems which are worth solving, which are the opportunities worth pursuing, and in order to pursue them, what kind of changes have to be brought into the environment, objects, interactions and the activities. Now comes value opportunity analysis. So once the empathy map has been created, AUIU map has been completed, we get into doing a value opportunity analysis. What it helps is, as you remember, we started that the purpose of this project actor analysis is to identify their needs. Now needs can be classified into different types of needs. So here this is a chart which has been adapted from Hannington. According to Hannington, there are couple of kinds of needs that you can identify: emotional needs, aesthetic related needs, identity related needs, impact related needs, ergonomics, core technology and quality. and within each of these there are sub needs. So according to Hannington, in emotion you can classify them as need for adventure, need for independence, need for security, sensuality, confidence, power. Similarly, in aesthetics, it's visual, auditory, olfactory, tactile, taste related. Maybe not all of them are applicable. Say for example, in the context of silk, taste does not matter. Then identity, point in time, sense of place. So you can have an identity because of a point in time, so also because of a sense of place and because of your own personality. Then impact on the social and the environmental side of it. Ergonomics related to comfort, safety, ease of use. Then core technology, which is related to reliability and enabling power to to the actors. Then quality, which is related to craftsmanship and durability. In this particular context which we are talking about, the socio-economic context, quality related to craftsmanship is a very important aspect, because many of these people, their entire source of pleasure is in that craftsmanship. So what we do is we try to write down our first actor. Say our first actor is weaver, and say our second actor is an entrepreneur who is the owner of the looms. My third actor is a designer. Now for each of these I will try to identify. So in this case, in case you are in doubt, okay, whether there is some adventure kind of a requirement, whether some independence kind of requirement, and what it is, then you can again ask your actors, or you can use your existing data to write down what according to you is the value, is the need for that particular actor. Once this chart is complete, it is preferable that you go back to your actors to verify it. Now let's come to the second process. So the second process is, so in my first process I got an understanding of my actors, of the infrastructure existing as well as where we want to go. I know now what my actors need, what are their current problems, and so on. Now my task comes to define the intervention context. So because in the socio-economic context, most of the time a predefined intervention context does not lie, or there are too many predefined intervention contexts, but we need to define over here some doable intervention context as well as maybe a series, but in a time gap, that how are we going to reach to that goal. So defining intervention context, first step is we clarify the design goals, and then once my design goals are clarified, I will do a competitor analysis. So let's see how do we clarify the design goals. Like I told you, these are contexts which are multi-stakeholder. You cannot do, it's never advisable that you do this clarification of design goals without the actors. Then you might come up with very interesting design goals, but they might not be acceptable to your actors. It might be also a situation because me, a designer coming from outside, I'm not very well acquainted with that system. I did research only for a couple of days, so I might give very naive design directions, which the actors know that either they might have already tried it, or they have reasons why it's not going to succeed. I might also bring in design interventions which the actors might be totally not interested to do it. So it's always better that you try to do this clarifying design goals sitting with the actors. Not necessarily you have to bring all the actors together in one place. Practically that is usually not possible, and also if you have a huge crowd coming up, then conducting a session for this activity becomes very difficult. So maybe you can conduct couple of those sessions, wherein in each of these sessions you get around 10 to 12 of these actors. In case that is also not feasible, you can also do this activity sitting with a couple of actors together, say 5 of the weavers, and you sit together and do it only with the weavers, but always try to do it with the actors. So what we try to do over here, the result is the SPSS problem statement design brief and identification of the unit of satisfaction. So we will use something called as clarify your goal tool, which is drawn from the Frog Collective Action Toolkit. So let's go and see what's a Frog Collective Action Toolkit. So you can download this particular toolkit. It has been designed by Frog. The Collective Action Toolkit was created to help bring groups together to accomplish a shared goal. It consists of an action map and activities in 6 areas. These activities offer different ways to develop solutions to make change happen in a community or organization. So what it consists of is, so the first step is you clarify your goal. Although you can see that I have written clarify your goal as the first step and the second step as build your group, there might not be situations in which you follow the same order. So that's why this particular chart also does not have much like one starting point, one end point. You can start anywhere, but it will be usually beneficial if at the end of each and every stage you try to clarify your goal. Check whether you are still in that particular goal, or see if you need to change your goal. So the first step is clarifying your goal. Second step, although as I told you, they can be done iteratively, they can be done in any particular order depending on your situation. We will in this lecture take a linear sequence. So then you build your group, then you try to seek new understanding from the issues and uncover needs. Then you can imagine more ideas. Then you make something real, which is like making a prototype, and you do a plan for action. So in our context, in clarifying the design goals, we necessarily do not need to involve all these steps. Our first step, which is clarify your goal, is a good enough process to do. Because build your group is very important to clarify your goal. So most likely you might need to follow only the step 1 and the step 2, but I will still discuss all the 6 steps, and you can take a decision in using some of these other steps also for doing the strategic analysis and then the next steps of this MSDS method. So clarifying your goal. So you agree on the problem you are trying to solve and what goals you want to achieve. This activity area is critical to your group success, as your goals may change depending on what you learn here. So I use a technique called as ripple effect. So decide what kind of impact you want your group to have, from improving people's lives in your community to changing your country or the world. So you do it at an individual level, community level, and the community becomes bigger to say a village, a town, a country, and so on. So as a result of this, you define your problem. So define the problem your group wants to tackle and establish key questions to answer along the way. Then after many problems have been defined, the group has to mutually agree on one particular area to concentrate on. So find the true north. Then you check your goal. See if anything has changed from your group's goals and make adjustments. So the suggested sequence over here is do a ripple effect and then try to find the true north. So we keep on repeating this process. So say I gather a group of weavers, or I gather a group of weavers and entrepreneurs. I ask them to note down or define all the problems that they are facing. Once they have noted down all the problems that they are facing, then I ask them, okay, try to identify what kind of impact you want to create, where all you want to make changes. Once that has been done, the changes can be evoked, okay, at individual level, at the whole Swalkuchi level, at the level of the entire silk industry. So I give these cues to the group, and the group brainstorms. Once all this brainstorming is done, the group can together find out, can give weightages to the different problems, to the different impacts that they want. As a result of giving these weightages, they can identify the true north, and that is how you get to your goal that you want to pursue. Now the question, how do you build your group? So this building of the group can happen twice. Once before you start on to clarifying your goal, because you need to bring a group to do that. So you can do it once before that, and you can do it once after it also. So like you identified a particular problem to be solved, you identified a particular goal for your project. Now to do that, achieve that, you need to bring in some more stakeholders. So again, there's a chance of building a new group. So say for example, you identify certain number of actors to whom you can use. So you bring them on board. You can also go and individually talk to them, where you ask them, please share your skills. As a result of which, you know, okay, which actor will be good for which stages of the project. Then you do knowledge hunting with them, because they have certain skills, so they will be able to, they also have certain knowledge. So how is it going to be helpful? Then you ask them, okay, who inspires us? This is more important topic to be dealt with in case you are dealing with a project which is like you're trying to solve the problem with a community where you really want to identify who inspires us. All these steps are not mandatory. You can follow the steps, the ones that you is required for your particular project. Then you identify the rings of connection. So in the group that you have identified, you can tell each one of them to identify others whom they can bring in and will be helpful for this particular project. Then we need to seek new understanding. So reach out to others and gain their perspective on issues that matter to them. Ask the right kinds of questions and explore how other people live their lives. Discover their unmet needs to better inform and inspire your group to help. So simply you do a brainstorming session to identify all issues and uncover needs. You can use the interviewing 101 technique, where plan an interview from start to finish, then use this plan to talk with people about issues that matter to them. We use the we saw, we heard technique, which is something similar to what our empathy map was trying to cover. Then you try to identify a pattern. Next, we can try to do imagining new ideas along with the group. So this is not a process, this is a process called as participatory design, where you design along with the actors, along with the users. So you have a jamming session where everybody brings on their idea, like what can be done and how it can be done. Then you remix each other's ideas, build upon each other's ideas, and then narrow down the set and identify, okay, these are good ideas. Not necessarily the designer has to pick up the idea, but the whole process can be also done to get better understanding of the actors. Then after this process is done, you can make something real. So whatever has been told, we can make a quick prototype of this whole process. The prototyping not necessarily needs to be a physical prototype. It can be also like an acting session which is designed, so in which the actors act and try to identify what can be the possible problems in the process. Then you finally end with plan for action. So setting an agenda, how do you achieve it? Divide and conquer. So like you assign tasks to different sets of people, you set the timeline, and keeping the momentum on. So how do you motivate your team to keep moving forward and communicate clearly about who is doing what? So for our achievement of strategic analysis, only the first two steps, clarifying design goals and build your team, were supposed to be used. The other steps can be used in case you want to use it for doing some design for a community. Now comes the next step, which is competitor analysis. So you saw for our previous context, where a project promoter was identified for the context of Fresh, which was a water purifier manufacturing company, we did competitor analysis by using Porter 5 forces. But many a times in the context of socio-economic ecosystems, Porter 5 forces are not applicable. If they are applicable, then you can do it. If they are not applicable, then a better process is something which we call as competitor analysis on form, category, generic and budget level. How does it look like? Say for example, I take a particular product. So I take a particular soft drink product. So who are the product form competitors? So includes only products or services of the same product type. So say I took Coca-Cola, maybe Thumbs Up, maybe Pepsi, all those products which have provide the same type of product. So all products and services which provide you the same product, they are at the form level. So say for example in case of Swalkuchi silk, what is the product form level competitor? Maybe Banarsi silk, maybe Kanchivaram silk, because they are also producing silk sarees. So that becomes the same product type. Then I try to identify product category level competitors. So products that have similar features and provide the same basic function. Say for example a silk saree and a cotton saree or a polyester saree. They provide the same features and the same basic function. So either of them should be possible. So in this case they provide the same basic function. It's a saree and it's a garment. So then I call them as product category level competitors. Then there are generic competitors. Incorporates the customer's notions of substitutability. These can be alternate ways of dressing. This can be also say a power loom machine. So they incorporate customers' notions of substitutability. Everything that you can substitute your silk saree with. As the term sounds, it can be a very, very big picture. So we have to consider the picture which is manageable for our context. Then comes budget. So the products and services that are purchased from the same general budget. Say for example a Muga silk saree, the starting price might be around 40,000 rupees. So you can easily buy a Muga saree which is cost say around 2 lakh rupees. Now that budget can also be used for buying a particular piece of jewelry, a gold jewelry, which is again in the same society is a priced item. So they will be struggling for the same level of budget. So products and services that are purchased from the same general budget. Again this can be a large number of products and you have to confine yourself. You have to see what all will you include and what all you will not include. Say for example, does it make sense to include say a car which costs around 3 lakh rupees in the same budget level? Maybe not, because the silk saree and the car might not be competing at the budget level in the same sense, and it might not bring you any benefit doing that comparison in the ecosystem. So again you can use this particular chart that we have. So I have my form level competitor, category competitor, generic competitor and budget competitor. Now I will use two columns over here. First one is local ecosystems main value proposition. So my local ecosystems main value proposition over here was Swalkuchi handloom silk. That was the main value proposition. Then another one I have the design intervention goal. So I will do all my competition analysis on these two aspects. One is the local ecosystems main value proposition and the design interventions goal that we set up. So say for example we set up a intervention context which is like setting up a yarn bank. So for that, what are the other competitors? So now when I take this particular local ecosystems main value proposition, which is Swalkuchi handloom silk, at form competition I have Sivsagar handloom cluster, because it again weaves the same kind of products, it's from the same state. So at a form level they are competing. Now after you write down the competitor's name, you try to identify what is that unique value which is offered by Sivsagar handloom cluster, which is not offered by Swalkuchi handloom silk, because of which Sivsagar handloom cluster might succeed more than Swalkuchi. Then at the category level, let's say I can have Banarsi silk saree. This is in context of Swalkuchi handloom silk. Again I try to identify the value offering over here which is not offered by our local ecosystems main offering. Generics, say substitution can happen with polyester which looks with the given look of a silk saree, or maybe power loom garments, and then the value offering by each of them. Budget level say gold, and what is the value offering over here, and not by Swalkuchi handloom silk. Then in the same we repeat with the design intervention context. So for the yarn bank, what are the competitors, if any? There might be times when you do not have one of these competitors available. So in that case, you can also leave the space blank. So once these two steps are completed, we are done with the parts which are different. So in the two types, so the promoter based economy and the promoter based stakeholder context and the socio-economic based stakeholder context, we are have a difference only in the step 1 and 2. From step 3, 4 and 5 we follow the same things. Why so? Because in step 3 we are doing a general system carrying structure analysis, which is a report on socio-economic technological macro trends and their influence on the reference context. So it's the same process. Then we do analysis of cases of excellence for sustainability, again the same process for both the contexts. And then we do analysis of sustainability and determine priorities for the design intervention in view of sustainability. So in the next lecture we will start with how to do exploration of opportunities. So since strategic analysis is complete, we know what is our design goal. So now we need to explore opportunities. So that will be the content for the next lecture, as well as designing system concepts. So the difference between the two processes is, in exploring opportunities I am trying to create ideas, and in designing system concepts I try to bring those ideas together to design a system. Thank you.